I have the headlight shell end of the wiring harness connectors all replaced. You can see here. This is the originals that I cut off. The only issue I had is the green one, if you recall, had been cut or broken quite short, so I had to splice it, as you see here. In this section of this piece of wire came off the other wiring harness, so I just spliced it on and then put a new three-way. That's a three-way connector there. 1, 2, 3. To match the original one here somewhere, right here. This is the original one, which is a three-way also. At this point, this end of the harness is complete. I'm going to have to replace this grommet. I think that probably fits up into the back of the headlight shell. I'll probably end up making my own. I haven't looked to see if that's available from Yamaha yet. If it's not, I can probably make my own grommet there. Now it's going to be a matter of cleaning up this sleeving, which I'm going to leave. I'm not going to replace the sleeve. It's not really damaged. I did have to open it up here a little bit so that I could slide it down, the sleeve, to have enough room here to put on the boots, as I talked about earlier when I was working on another part of the harness. And I'll go ahead and tape this back together and we'll begin the rewrapping. I'm probably going to start at the back end of the harness. Let me back this out here a little bit for you. I think I'm going to start at the taillight end of the harness, which is in my left hand, and decide what I'm going to rewrap. Probably, I look at it, I don't know if I can clean that up or not. Might be just a little grease or oil. If I can salvage it, I will. If I can't, I won't, and I'll just rewrap the whole thing, which is not terribly difficult to do, frankly. It's not a tough thing. And keep cleaning as I go. So that'll be the next part of the process. We're going to continue on now with working on the Yamaha wiring harness. We're going to actually start the process of rewrapping most of the harness. At least the worst of the wrap will be replaced. I'm going to start here at the left end, or the taillight end, in my left hand. This is a set of wires that go down to the swing arm for the brake light switch, and you can see there, I think I've got those cleaned up pretty well. I'm going to leave this original wrap in place. I cut off camera, I cut off this trailing end and then wrapped a little piece of electrical tape around that just to secure the end of this wrap. The wrap that was around this section of the harness I also removed. If you recall, it was wrapped from this gray electrical tape, which is original. It was wrapped down and continued on down to the rest of the harness. So I removed that section of original wrap as well. Let's talk for a minute about supplies. I have original style wrap. Now this wrap itself is not adhesive. This is just a wrap. There's no adhesive or glue on the back side, like an electrical tape. And that's what, right here in my left hand. This is electrical tape. This is 3M brand. I think you can see it right there. This is my preferred tape because it's very thin. It's not near as thick as some inexpensive electrical tapes. This is a very thin section to it. And I keep a couple of rolls of that around. That's electrical tape. The wrap is non-adhesive, as you can see here. That's the same as this. Now, I buy my wrap, actually it comes in wider rolls like you see here, and those are about 1 inch wide, 25 millimeters. I buy this from VintageConnections.com, the same folks that supply the ends and the kits to repair the harnesses, the connectors. They also supply this OEM style wrap. You can probably buy it other places too, but I've always bought it from VintageConnections.com. It comes in wider rolls like this. Like I said, this is about 1 inch, pretty close, just under 1 inch, 25 millimeter. The Japanese, at least on some of their harnesses, use 2 different widths of wrap. They use a smaller wrap, and this actually came off of this section of the harness. And this is about 18 millimeters wide, if you were to measure it, approximately 18 millimeters, right there. And then they also use, up in other sections of the harness, like you see here, more of the 25 millimeter or 1 inch wide, which is pretty close to the wrap that I buy from Vintage Connections. They do not have, at least the last I knew, they didn't have the narrower wrap in stock. I don't think they carried it. So what I do is I took I have a couple of these. I keep a couple of these around always. I just took a wider roll over to the bandsaw and cut it down to 18 millimeters, and I think you can see there where I cut it. And of course that leaves a little leftover. It's easier to manipulate the thinner tape than it is the wider tape and avoid wrinkles and those kind of things. So I'm going to use the thinner tape to complete this section here and to wrap this section down into here. I remove the tape from this section I'm going to replace. I'm going to remove the tape or the wrap from this piece as well eventually. And once I start wrapping the main harness, like you can see up in here, then I'll probably go to the wider tape, because that's what the OEMs used here. You can see that's quite a bit wider. Again, it's 25 millimeters or 1 inch than this tape, which came off with this section, which is about 18 millimeters or so. I also keep around liquid tape. You can see here, it's really like a thick adhesive, and it seals and waterproofs wiring. I don't use a lot of electrical or liquid tape. I keep it around more as an adhesive than anything else. Not sure I'm going to end up using it on this harness or not yet. We'll see as we get into it. But I will primarily be using the wrap, the 2 different widths wrap, and of course the electrical tape. The other thing I prefer to do, and you'll see here off to the left, is a bench vise. This is not bolted on. This is just a spare vise I keep in the shop. It's an inexpensive vise. What I will do with that is I will take this end, the end or the section that I'm going to wrap, and I will secure it in the soft jaws of the vise to act as a third hand, because it will become challenging to keep tension on the wire, pull it taut, wrap it with only 2 hands. I'll do all of that all at the same time. So I just pull this over. I keep it over near my milling machine and my lathe, and just move it over here for this purpose. So that'll act as a third hand. Back to the harness itself, where I'm going to begin the repair is on this section here. As I mentioned, I removed the damaged piece of wrap here. I put a little piece of electrical tape, just 1 wrap here to secure the loose end of the original wrap so it won't go anywhere. I'm going to come up here 1 inch or so, 25 millimeters, and I'll complete 1 full wrap and then continue on working my way down around this joint and probably up to about where my right thumb is. Terminate this wrap, come back, begin wrapping here, bring that down to about the same spot. Then I will pick up with the wider wrap. Well, let me back up. Then I will rewrap this section that I already removed the wrap from with the narrower wrap. Then I will rewrap this section so that all four of those, 1, 2, 3, and 4, will have been rewrapped and terminated at the main harness. Then I will come back probably with a wider wrap, begin here where I terminated these two, and begin the process of rewrapping all the way up to the vinyl loom right here, loom cover. I'll have to clean this up a little bit, and we'll terminate up here. So we have a little bit more work to do. First thing I'm going to do is, just to demonstrate, I'm going to wrap this section and terminate it here so you can see the process. Again, starting with the thinner of the two wraps, non-adhesive again. I'm going to start about 25 millimeters or an inch up. It's not critical where you start. Begin wherever you wish. I'm going to just make at least one full wrap here. I'm going to keep it tight, get it started like that. Take your time, there's no rush here. If you want, you could take a little bit of the liquid tape and use it as an adhesive to secure that end. I find that's not necessary. I prefer not to, but you can if you're more comfortable with that. And just complete at least one full wrap. By doing that, what you've done is you've sealed the end inside so it can't unravel. Now it's just a matter of beginning to overlap your tape and keep it tight, like that. I strive for about a 50% overlap. Notice I'm keeping tension to the right, gentle pressure on the wire. That's why I got it clamped in the vise. And do your best to try to keep your wrap straight and level to avoid as many wrinkles as you can. It's not always possible, you'll find, but just do the best you can. What you're looking for here is integrity more than looks, because let's be honest, generally speaking, wiring harnesses really aren't seen, most of it, as a rule. So what I strive for is integrity, a good quality wrap, rather than having perfect with no wrinkles, because you'll never get there anyway. The narrower the wrap, the easier it is to manipulate, as you can imagine. Make sure your vise is kept tight. And we're just going to continue on like that, right up to this joint here. See if I can get in a little closer for you. There we go. Get that out of the way. When you get to the joints, it gets a little bit fiddly. So you're going to have to take your time here and work your way around. Notice I open it up to about a 90-degree, just to allow me access to the inside of that joint. You can keep it as tight as you reasonably can. A couple of wraps like that. Now I'm going to bring it back together. You can see where the original bend was right there, I think. And that's where I'm going to strive to try to duplicate as best I can here. Trying to keep the wrap as straight as reasonably possible. Keep it tight. And just continue on. I'm going to terminate this right about here. Now, remember, I'm going to rewrap this wire. It's going to be rewrapped down through here, and will come through this joint also. So, a couple of wraps like that. cut it off. Remember, this is going to be all covered again anyway with another section of wrap. Now I'm going to take a piece of electrical tape. This is the kind with the adhesive on the back. I'm going to cut a short section. It doesn't have to be very long, because all I need to do is secure that wrap that I just did. I'm going to make sure it's tight, like that. Now I'm just going to take the adhesive tape and just wrap it around that wrap. And that's just to terminate the end so it doesn't unravel. So I'm going to release the other end from the clamp or from the vise. And you can see I began the rewrap right here, continued it down to here. And I think now you can see the benefit of using the vise by holding the other end tight so I could concentrate on the wrapping. Now again, to wrap this wire without any wrinkles is very difficult to do. If you want to fiddle around and take a lot of time, you could probably get it without wrinkles, but I don't obsess over that. I'm looking for integrity again of wiring rather than a nice pretty job. I want it to look reasonably good, of course, but that certainly is good enough for me. Now we're going to go back to here. I'm going to put this end in the, clamp it in the vise, begin my double wrap here and work my way down around this joint, all the way down to about the same spot or so. I might go just another wrap or so further, terminate it. Now what I'm going to do is clamp this end. This is really the section that goes to the tail light, with using the narrow tape once again, or wrap, beginning at the original gray electrical tape, and I'll rewrap this section down to here and terminate it. Do the same thing with this section right here, and then I'll have them all four terminated at the main harness. Then I'll come back to probably about here with a wider tape or wrap and begin the process of rewrapping all the way back up, end up here. So I'm not going to show all of that. I will probably show bits and pieces of rewrapping these other three sections, but you have the gist of it, I think, right now, and I'll show you what I think is relevant as we continue on with this wire harness. I've completed removing the rest of the old wrap from the balance of the harness, and I've done some inspection and a little bit more cleaning, and a few things I wanted to share with you. Beginning at the left and working this way, everything in through here is in good shape. None of the wires are damaged or nicks for these sections here. As I move further down this way, you'll notice this, actually I think that's supposed to be blue, a light blue. In fact, I know it's supposed to be light blue. You can see it right here. It's changed color, probably from exposure to the elements. That's the neutral light switch, and this is where it attaches to the case on the engine. You can see the wire insulation has been compromised right there. The wire itself is okay. It's not damaged, but the wire has been, insulation has been damaged. There's a couple of ways you go about fixing this. One is remove the end, the spade end, slide a piece of heat shrink tubing over that, heat it up, shrink it, and then replace the end. I'm not going to do that. If the end was, this end was in worse shape or bad shape, I probably would, but I'm not going to mess with that. Instead, what I'm going to do is remove this yellow adhesive back tape, electrical tape from the factory, wrap this compromised insulation with my own electrical tape, a couple of wraps around, and then I'll replace this yellow tape with electrical tape, and then I'll wrap it with the wrap itself, starting probably at this end and working my way down. And I think that'll take care of that situation. Moving along the wiring, these wires, these 4 wires do not get wrapped, at least they weren't initially from the factory. There is a bit of a compromise in the insulation on this orange wire right there. Again, I could remove the spade connector on the end, slide over heat shrink, and heat it. I might do that in this one only because this connector looks like it's been splayed out. Not sure if it has or not, but I might use heat shrink tubing here, or I might just put a couple of wraps of black electrical tape and then seal it, the ends, with this liquid tape to prevent it from unraveling over time. I'll decide that when I get here. And further on down the wiring here, the darker blue and then the light blue, you can see the insulation's been compromised. Again, the wiring is intact. Looks like it's been chafed. I'll end up using electrical tape and wrapping each of those individually because that'll get wrapped with the external wrap anyway. So that'll be repaired with electrical tape. Once I have those basic repairs done, I'm going to start back here on the left, the tail light section, and wrap this, bring that down into about here. I'll wrap this section here, bring it down to about here. Then I will go and wrap this section and bring it up into here. Then I'll have the outliers all wrapped. Then what I will do is start probably about here and start wrapping the whole loom, progressing all the way down to here. But first I'm going to have to effect some of these repairs. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. I think you understand how I'm going to go about that, and then I'll bring you back a bit later. I'm bringing you back a little earlier than I had originally intended because I want to share a change in plans. After reviewing this damaged insulation on the neutral wire right here, I've decided I am going to go ahead and use heat shrink tubing to repair that. If you remember, this was wrapped something like that, and the wrap came around and then kept going, and just a little bit of that was exposed, but I don't like the potential angle that's going to be at, so I've cleaned it up really well here. I do have a replacement end, which is a virtual identical match to the original. So I'm going to clip this end off and slide a piece of heat shrink tubing down over this section here, seal this up, put this back on, and then have to put the new spade connector end on. I'll go ahead and do that next. I'll probably show most of that, but I will show it in a sped up mode because you've seen me do it before. But I'll go ahead and share the details with you anyway. And there we have the completed repair. Heat shrink tubing over the damaged insulation. Look at the difference in colors between these two sections here. This is the original. It's turned green. And then a new end there.